What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Skyward Data podcast hosted by VirtualZ Computing. I am not your regular host, Mark Potts. My name is Steven Perva. I am the guest host for this episode of the podcast, and I don't know what better episode for me to be a guest host of than this one where I get to talk to my friend, Darren Surch. Darren is the CEO of Interskill Learning, which is the industry's most prolific training company and a good friend of mine. And just so the audience knows that I know a little bit about you, Darren, let me kind of riff here for a second. So first off, thank you for joining me, and thanks for being here and kind of my first foray into podcast hosting. Darren is not just the CEO of Interskill Learning. You've probably seen him, if you're in the industry, pretty much everywhere. He's all over the community. He speaks at conferences. He is one of two lifetime IBM champions for IBM-Z. So Darren, why don't you go ahead and let the folks know who you really are so that if I missed anything, you can fill us all in.
I have nothing else to say after that effort. Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, good to see you, mate. And thanks to VirtualZ for putting this on. And congrats to VirtualZ for all their successes as well. Remarkable company. I am Darren Surch, as mentioned, CEO of Interskill Learning. We are the biggest mainframe training provider in the world, in the industry. We do over 1 million hours of mainframe training globally. And we'll go into more. This isn't the thing about Interskill. This is just chatting about industry and skills and whatever else we choose to chat about. But yeah, lifetime IBM champion. And if it comes up later, I'll talk to you more about my constant need to give back. Being a kid from the bush, I'm always wanting to give back to the industry and lift people up and so forth. So well placed to do that with Interskill, because training can lift people like few other things can.
Absolutely. And we have a ton of topics that we want to cover today, especially some of the community engagement that you have and myself as well. And I agree with you. I do want this to be as much of a dialogue as it can be, where you and I are kind of just chatting. So for those of you who are expecting that amazing professionalism and the tactical conversation that Mark brings to you, this might be a bit different. I think it's impossible, Darren, to decouple Darren Surch from Interskill Learning. So you gave us a little bit of stats there. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about why Interskill is such a household name in mainframe training?
That's a brilliant question. I mean, if you've ever heard me talk, you'll know I tend to go back in time to give context on things. A gentleman by the name of Ray Menzies and a lady by the name of Deborah Scott first started to develop computer-based training. This is in 1990. I was a hydrographer. That's my qualifications, a water resources scientist in Australia. I'd done the usual young Aussie thing and gone off and bummed around the world for a couple of years, and had a few drinks with some people at Oktoberfest in '89 who happened to be, this was one of those fate things, the people sitting around me at the table in the Hofbrauhaus at the Oktoberfest were mainframe programmers from all over, England, Germany, South Africa, some Yanks, et cetera, et cetera. And they could convince me by the end of this conversation that computing, because mainframe computing was computing back in those days, was the way to go. So when I came back to Australia, I did a 1-year course in COBOL and Kix programming. Anyway, was going to go out and be a Kix and COBOL programmer, but the heads of the college that I was at, again, Ray Menzies and Deborah Scott, they said, we're starting to experiment with this new thing called computer-based training. And back then, the internet wasn't really around, so computer-based training was just doing some training on a standalone IBM PS2 PC. And I thought, fantastic, let's do that. So anyway, we started making courses, JCL, MVS, ISPF, JES2, COBOL, Kix, just some of the basic ones and so forth. And this was a good form of training. I get to the point eventually. And then the internet exploded, and that's when e-learning really came to the fore. And, travel forward to today, back then classroom training and instructor-led training was the way anyone trained on mainframe. You'd go to IBM, you'd organize a classroom course on whatever topic you wanted to do with IBM, and you'd attend the course, or they'd come to your place. But these days, e-learning's just normal. People of your generation have been doing it since you were at school. And every corporate has a massive big resource of e-learning, on-demand, year-round online training for Microsoft Office and soft skills and process and procedure and all sorts of other things. Interskill is that. We are a massive resource of thousands and thousands of hours of online courses on e-learning. So we are awesome, and our courseware is awesome, and so forth. I don't want to say we're where we are by default, but I think corporations now, the same as they have this big central resource of e-learning, Interskill is really the only big resource of e-learning for mainframe, and so it's a bit of a no-brainer that the big corporations use this resource as part of their overall offering for their mainframe personnel, because obviously, as I'm sure we'll talk about, skills in the mainframe space are a critical thing. So I've just made it sound like we're where we are by default, but there's various other things. The collaboration we have with IBM around the IBM Digital Badge Program as well is a massive component of that. I think we did some stats earlier this year. It's over 80% of all IBM digital badges issued for mainframe training globally are for Interskill courseware. So that's a real skills benchmarking from IBM. That's another reason people do our training so much. And I'll shut up now because, again, it's not supposed to be an ad for Interskill.
No, you're all good. I think that one thing that for me, as someone who's kind of constantly previewing the industry and watching it, either neck deep in it or whatever you want to say, it's Interskill to me isn't just learning. It's about more than that. So I can't log on to LinkedIn or anything like that nowadays without seeing, hey, I just earned this badge or whatever. So to me, it is really this idea of just rallying people around a cause of learning. And that's something that we talk about in the industry a lot. And you mentioned it yourself. It's hard not to rewind back to the past, Interskill being founded in the early 90s and all of that.
Just quickly, sorry. Just another thing as well, I suppose, is that we're not a training provider that has some mainframe courses. We do mainframe. That's all we do. So that's why I think we're so embedded and such part of the mainframe community, is that we come from mainframers. Our subject matter experts are seasoned, experienced mainframers from all across the industry, and they have that real world experience, and they've seen everything from successes to flames shooting out of the back of the mainframe. I mean, they've just lived it and breathed it and so forth. Most of our people, funnily enough, gravitate to us. Most of our people are either mainframers or, our global staff are the mainframers or their parents, their dads or their mums were mainframers or they've had mainframe in the family somewhere, which is fantastic. We get all these cool stories and people in the mainframe community tend to gravitate back, it seems.
Yeah. There's definitely a legacy of passing the baton between mainframers, and something that's also part of the mainframe legacy that you and I do want to talk about. When we were kind of talking previously, is that there's consistently, and I've heard you speak about this on other podcasts that I've listened to you talk on. There's consistently this perception that the mainframe industry is suffering from a skills gap. As someone who sees the industry from a skills perspective at a macro level, so you kind of see the stats that you collect and how many people are management, senior leadership, or whatever are looking into getting training and why they need it. How would you describe this notion of a skills gap that we hear about all the time whenever people, the media, anybody talks about mainframes?
Yeah, I don't think there's anywhere there's not a skills gap these days. I mean, things are changing so fast, especially around technology. Look at any industry and there's a skills gap. If your workforce from a corporate side, but also on a personal side for your career, if the workforce isn't embracing, or if you're not embracing lifelong learning, then there's going to be skill gaps. But you better be learning all the time. back in the and as an amusing little side note, when I first started in 1990 in the mainframe space, guess what everyone was talking about? People were walking around with the vapors going, oh my God, there's going to be mainframers retiring soon. There's going to be a skill gap. This is 1990. And here we are 30 years later. The industry's still stormy along. The mainframe industry is still stormy along just as strong. We have found mainframers. We've found a way. We're continuing on the same way. So the histrionics and so forth about a mainframe skills crisis is laughable, really. Of course, there are shortages of good people, but I think anywhere in IT and pretty much across the world at the moment, there's a shortage of good people. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, you're always looking for the best people because that's your edge. You can tweak software, you can tweak hardware, you can make changes to applications and so forth and move the needle on your productivity or success or et cetera, by 0.5% or 1% or 2% or whatever. You start getting your people optimally trained, the people that are running these systems. You get your people optimally trained, not just in their normal work, but to come up with that next great big hurrah, industry-changing, business-changing idea and putting that into place, et cetera, et cetera. Training's a thing that can shift the needle massively compared to anything else.
Right. I think that there would be a much larger crisis if we didn't feel like we needed to continually skill up. That would mean that the thoughts are true, right? That the mainframe is stale, the mainframe is legacy, and nothing's changed. By virtue of the fact that we do have to continue to skill up, I think it's indicative of the fact that the industry is constantly evolving. And you had mentioned something just previously about how this isn't just a mainframe thing. This is pretty much an everywhere thing. And that kind of leads me to a question that I did want to ask next is this notion of the idea in the industry is always mainframes versus non-mainframes in terms of technology, right? We talk about that a lot. We have mainframers that call other computers, quote unquote, toy computers while using a cell phone every single day, while using a desktop or a laptop PC every single day to do their critical job, right? There's a big difference there. In your opinion, is there really a huge chasm between, especially with the evolving landscape that we're in today, is there a huge chasm between what we consider mainframe skills and just general IT skills?
No, the lines have really blurred. As I was saying before, the mainframe computing once was computing. There wasn't anything else than mainframe computing. The lines have really blurred between the mainframe and other systems now. The mainframe talks to other systems and other systems talk to mainframe, which didn't used to be the case. So what you said about people calling other computers toy computers and so forth, I'd challenge you to find anyone young that ever says that. It would typically be a crusty old mainframer, and they say it tongue in cheek as well. But these days people can come in. IBM positions mainframe as the hybrid cloud, part of the hybrid cloud, and that's exactly what it is. I was watching another one of these podcasts just to get an idea of them beforehand, and one of the legends of the industry, Frank DeGilio, was talking about Python. And back in the day, JCL was critical. Everyone in mainframe needed to know JCL, and you did so many things with JCL. These days, a young Python programmer coming out of college can come in and do pretty much everything that JCL can do. And I think these days, and again, talking application programming or systems programming, programmers are polyglot now. You don't just know one language. Back in the day, learning COBOL and Kix and that was it, and you could work for years on your skills and so forth. These days, people are always trying to be multilingual. You know Python and that'll get you going, but you'll pick up some recs as you go, and you'll learn to handle JCL because there's so much of it written. You've got to tweak other people's JCL and COBOL and so forth. So again, it goes back to that lifelong learning thing. People are going to have to continue to reinvent themselves and add extra, arrows to their quiver or whatever the saying is. You got to continue to expand and better yourself. I'll gladly talk about careers and so forth. You need to reinvent yourself because the industry's reinventing itself and the technologies are changing all the time.
Absolutely.
So if you've got one or two skills, you're very, very boxed in. So you really, even if you think I'm the best COBOL programmer or the best Kix programmer or whatever it is out there, that's all well and good. But as the industry changes, you'd better have been learning other systems, other languages, and so forth. So you've got somewhere to go. If things change, if your company gets out of that, if it changes strategically, you can seize upon the opportunity. Career resiliency. You can seize upon the opportunity and jump forward and be one of the leaders in the next big thing, just because you've kept ahead of things.
Yeah, and I have built effectively an entire career on kind of being that bridge, right? And I think what you say about constantly reinventing yourself and being prepared for the next best thing is really important, because we see it in programming specifically, especially someone who kind of just observes general IT. As a way to keep myself on my toes. There's something that you told me way early in our friendship, was this notion of training isn't just sitting down in front of a module and watching somebody teach you something or reading a book. It's hopping into, say, an article someone wrote or a blog post someone wrote while you're having your cup of coffee in the morning. And that really resonated really strongly with me. So I go out there and I preview what's going on, what people are talking about. And you see new aspiring programmers saying, what language should I learn, right? And then someone says, oh, well, JavaScript's like what everyone knows right now. You have to learn some of the fundamentals on top of it, like Node.js and all of those other, like React and those frameworks that sit on top of it. I think that we're starting to see that evolution in the mainframe space, where people are starting to say, well, how can I break in? And what should I learn first? Should I learn JCL? Should I learn Rex? But you had mentioned kind of this notion of Python, and it got me wondering if the landscape that you're seeing in terms of engagement with education topics that you all have out there, is that starting to change, or is it pretty consistent? Are you saying, yeah, we always see people wanting to learn COBOL, that's most likely going to be true, but now we're starting to see Python creep up, we're starting to see functionality like Zoe creep up, or is that landscape changing in your experience?
It's always changing, like the industry. I mean, people want to learn. Funnily enough, though, JCL is still one of our most used courses every year. For people that have to understand it. But yeah, the landscape's changing. People are picking up new skills. I suppose it goes back to just enjoying your life. I mean, if you're in a job and you're coding and you don't, if you're not hungry and intellectually curious and wanting to say, okay, there's a better way I could do this if I could learn this other language, or if I could do this, or who can I talk to, what can I do about this? This is just a vibrant life where you're curious and you're picking up new skills and you're finding out better ways to do things and so forth. For me anyway, there's joy in that. And as you said, training doesn't have to be structured training where you go to a class or you sit through a long e-learning course or anything like that. This is scrolling through your LinkedIn feed in the morning with your cup of coffee and finding an article by somebody who says something, and you start clicking on that. There's too many rabbit holes you can go down with YouTube or other social media. Let's try and go down professional rabbit holes and say, oh, they said something about this new language. I wonder what I could learn about that. Let's go and see. IBM have offered up Qiskit, so you can go and play around on quantum programming, absolutely free. Thank you, IBM. But holy cow, that stuff's, I'm going to have to dust off some of my old programming skills soon and go and have a look at that, because that's just next generation stuff. So education doesn't have to be this structured thing that you wait for your boss to tell you to go and do it, or you think, oh God, I haven't done any training in 2 years. I'd better do something for my career. Just be involved. The community that you talked about before. If you're interacting with friends and colleagues in the community, and somebody in a conversation at a share conference or in some other user group or whatever says this, just you connect with them online or give them a call the old-fashioned way, or go and chat to them and find out what they're talking about, and all of a sudden you think, oh, wow, this is really interesting. Okay, and you get to dive into that. Whether it's exactly related to the job you're currently doing or not, go with your passion and with your interest. It may open up doors to, you being a leader of a project on the next big technology or some new initiative that your company's got. You're one of the only people that knows about it because you've been reading about it and playing around with it in the background. I think mainframers are just naturally intellectually curious people, and they're based on this community, they're just well placed to be investigating and delving into new things and so forth. Anyway, I do ramble on, mate.
No, I love it. I have always told people that kind of finding that ability to ignite your passion around something is going to be key to success, because anybody could do a job, right? It's work, right? That's why they call it work. It doesn't always have to be fun, but you should focus on it being as fun as possible. So for someone like myself, I'm always seeking out a way to make what I'm doing exciting, and I always try to say I'm trying to stay ahead of the curve. Nothing's more exciting to me than when I'm explaining something and I see someone's eyes just kind of light up a touch, right? And they're just like, I didn't even know you could do that. You can invoke like a load module through Python or whatever, and their eyes light up. How do you do that? Show me a code example. And then suddenly you're like, that's where you've been. That's where you've been hiding this whole time. The person who's hungry for more knowledge, right? And this ability to tap into things is really exciting to me. And I think that a lot of people forget that when they got into computing when they started, it wasn't because they were like, I really would love to have a neat little paycheck and a safe job. They're like, this sounds insanely fun. I want to get out there and I want to be doing something. You were sat around a table at Oktoberfest talking to people and they ignited something in you and you're like, I want to check this out. This sounds interesting. I'm guessing it wasn't like, yeah, this sounds like a stable paycheck, right? You were probably like, this sounds really cool and exciting. I'm going to give it a go. And so I like that, but I want to kind of pivot the conversation just a bit to this idea of getting started, right? I get this question a lot. People come to me and say, well, what do I need to learn first to get started? And that's a huge topic. We could talk for maybe 3 hours just about that alone. I do want to talk about the programs that we see and the way that skills are being brought into organizations. So there are a number of different programs that are designed to onboard incoming professionals into mainframe roles. So we have things like the Vitality program, I believe the Franklin Apprenticeship, and you may know of a lot more than I know of them. But outside of those programs specifically, which those programs are generally designed and kind of orchestrated by mainframe vendors, people who have what I would argue is a vested interest in getting people kind of into the industry. Do you feel that the users of mainframes, people who are using mainframe computers as part of their critical infrastructure, are really rising to the challenge to help solve what they consider their own skills issues?
Good question. All these multifaceted questions you ask. Yeah, I mean, this has been my experience over 30 years, and I live this every day because Interskill is corporate training, not individual training. You know, the corporations come to us, or we go to the corporations that run mainframes and say, okay, how do we get your workforce better? How do we get them optimally trained and have all the skills they need and so forth? IBM's done remarkable work over the last 30 years with their originally academic initiative, but just all of the Meredith Stoll and her team are just phenomenal, tireless and energetic and so on and so forth. IBM Z Explorer for college students and high school students and anybody else is phenomenal. Really, really top-notch training and a great introduction into the mainframe. IBM's got various other offerings as well for people to learn. I suppose the industry media, podcasts and articles and all of this sort of stuff, I find it a little short-sighted that they're continually focusing on college students and graduates and other people, getting them introduced to the mainframe and into the industry. That's one component. But for a corporation with 500 or 1,000 mainframers in their mainframe workforce, that's 1% or 2% of the workforce. And sure, they're important to bring these people in, train them up, and replace the retirements as they happen and be that next generation of mainframers. But for goodness sake, corporations can't afford to lose sight of the fact that with things changing so quickly, everybody's got to be trained. Don't spend all your time and effort and concentration on 2% of your workforce, these new hires and stuff. Of course, that's important, but every single person in your workforce, in your mainframe workforce, needs to be upskilling and updating their skills and picking up new skills and becoming more versatile and cross-skilled and so on and so on and so forth. It's just a constant thing. To answer your question, most companies do a great job. Your company, Ensono, phenomenal. We do business with them, and they're an outstanding training organization. IBM, Kyndryl, DXC, etc. I don't know whether I'm supposed to be naming names here, but the bigger mainframe shops are phenomenal because they understand how important that is, that they're really optimally trained. Some companies, I suppose, some companies are underwhelming in the effort. I've heard, as I mentioned before, for the last 30 years, this may be a bit controversial. I've heard for the last 30 years, people talking about this mainframe skills problems and people retiring and so forth. And that's all well and good, and the industry's still going strong, and IBM's done great work. Broadcom does amazing work as well, with Vitality and all of their other training offerings. My point is that in the late 90s, when everyone realized that Y2K was coming and there was going to be issues with Y2K because of the way COBOL code had been coded using 2 digits for dates, and everyone's like, oh God, and the media got hold of it, and suddenly the world was going to shut down, and it was the latest thing of the day. But you know what? Corporations threw money at it, and they went through all their COBOL code, and they looked at everything. They threw money at it. They said, okay, we need to get this done because we can't afford to have this stuff go down. And it ticked over the new millennium, and it was fine. There were a couple of little hiccups, but they gave it the focus that it needed. They gave it the importance that it needed, and they invested in making sure that it was fixed. The mainframe skills issue, that's again been going on since I started in 1990. So the industry finds a way, and we're doing fine. You don't run around like Chicken Little and think that the sky's falling. But to my point, some companies are very underwhelming. A lot of the companies in the mainframe space are investing heavily. They're being strategic about it. They're looking at their entire workforce. They're making sure that there's training on offer. They're making sure that it's rolled out in a logical way. They're making sure that it goes to the people who need it the most, and so on and so on and so forth. Other companies are still back in old 1960s, 1970s, 1980s habits of just doing ad hoc class here and there and not approaching things in a very strategic way. And if things ever get tight, guess what the first budget is that they cut is the damn training budget. So I sort of understand it, but when you hear people getting the vapors now about, oh, what are we going to do when these senior mainframers retire, and how are we going to keep our mainframe workforce skills up, it makes me want to roll my eyes sometimes, because it's to the point. I've rambled on quite a bit here, but it is incredibly solvable. There are training resources out there. There are all the techniques now, all the best practice to really train up a phenomenal mainframe workforce, both existing workforce and new hires. I gave I spoke at a couple of conferences about internal mainframe talent pools, which is companies cross-training their non-mainframe, so they're distributed systems people or programmers or whatever, just giving them mainframe skills. So instead of having to look outside and fight over the few graduates that are coming out, you can just bring your internal people across from distributed systems to mainframe systems, which makes them more multi-skilled, because you've trained them up yourself. So there's various ways of doing this incredibly successfully, but companies have to give it the priority it needs. Otherwise, stop damn complaining. Don't go to IBM and start complaining about, oh, there's not enough mainframers coming through. It is solvable. Give it the attention it deserves. Give it the priority it deserves. Throw some money at it, and you'll absolutely solve it. So
if the moment you're concerned about training is when someone gives you that retirement notice, hey, I'm actually going to retire, and it's happening in the next month. Yeah. That's not the right time to be considering what you want to do about your skills pipeline. And we see that all too much. And I think that something that you had said that kind of triggered a thought in me is this idea of, if when a vacancy happens, for whatever reason that might happen, a lot of people haven't built this pipeline to kind of keep the effort sustained. So instead, when the time comes to fill that vacancy, say someone retires or someone moves on to another role or whatever they might do, they are looking for a one-to-one replacement. This is somebody who knows their environment as well as the person that is leaving or has left, and has that 25 plus years of experience, knows all of the complexities and that tribal knowledge that you likely know. That doesn't exist. So you have to have this
coaching and mentoring. No, sorry, coaching and mentoring has to be a key part of that. You're absolutely right. So again, good that the companies, the mainframe orgs, are bringing in, trainees and youngsters, because the knowledge and experience that's in the heads of the senior mainframers, they can't be expected to do a brain dump in a Word document the week before they leave and have anyone to make sense of it. That stuff has to be, that community and that coaching and the mentoring and so forth has to happen for, a decade probably before they leave. That knowledge transfer is basically the property of the employer. The mainframe orgs have all that knowledge in the heads of their senior mainframers. They got to get that out and get it across to the next generation. So coaching and mentoring, let's say mentoring. I mean, coaching's more technical skills passed over. Mentoring is more career guidance and assistance in that way, but we sort of use them interchangeably. But that has to be, like, every senior mainframer out there, corporations take note and senior mainframers take note. Every senior mainframer should be mentoring. Again, Frank DiGilio mentors about 20 people. He's just amazing, but he does it smart. He couldn't possibly find time. Mentors aren't supposed to be teachers. They're supposed to be guides. And so Frank has a call, every quarter or something with a lot of his people, just a half-hour Teams call, Zoom call, whatever it is, and talks to them and connects them to the right people, or tells them, what they should study up on or what they should read or whatever. That's passing that stuff on. That's giving back and lifting that next generation. And so every senior mainframer should be a coach or mentor. Every mid-career and an early career mainframer should be going out, if they haven't already got one, and finding a mentor. Do it.
Agree.
Seriously.
Agree.
You have to do that for your career, and your organization will love you for it too.
Yeah. And I think we're kind of speaking to two audiences right now, because something that strikes me as you're talking about this topic is somebody once told me, and it might have been Frank, who may not consider himself to be a mentor of mine, but I consider him to be a mentor of mine. We kind of have these happenstance interactions, is talking to senior mainframers, talking to people who would consider themselves mid-tenure and beyond. Part of skilling up isn't just learning the next language du jour, learning the next infrastructure du jour, and getting yourself kind of acquainted with that. It's also understanding that you should be actively looking for the next you. At any given moment, you should be looking for the person that you're going to hand the baton to. And if there's nobody there, you need to be having those conversations with your leadership, the leadership in your organization, and say, hey, I know a whole lot of stuff, and I need to help pass that along. The other conversation that I wanted to have with you about this pipeline is something that maybe you could speak directly to leadership. What would you consider to be kind of the secret? You've spoken about it already a bit. What would you consider to be the secret to success in building an appropriate skills pipeline that can sustain that event that we just talked about? You have that late tenure mainframer who knows the organization in and out. Everybody talks to them when it comes to a mainframe topic. How can leadership sustain that vacancy happening, whether that's from a retirement or going to a different company or whatever the reason might be? What would you say the key to success is in making sure that doesn't create a crisis for an organization?
Yeah. Organizations must know, through your HR department, through your senior mainframe leaders, your workforce, and the age of the people and likely when they're going to retire. And you've got, this many people that are going to retire in the next 2 years, and this many people are going to retire in the next 5 years, and so on and so forth. You've got some sort of an idea of your natural attrition of people leaving and so forth. So you're going to have a fair idea of, okay, next year I'm going to have to replace 10 people, 3 of them through retirements and probably average out. Next year, I'm going to have to replace 15. Next year, I'm going to have to replace 10 again. Next year, only 1 or 2, hopefully, and so on and so forth. You can really start to map this out. I mean, we are in the industry of data, for goodness sake. So start using some of that analysis on looking at your workforce. And corporations do this. This is what the HR department does. So you're looking at your people and what you'll need. I was talking to someone who shall remain unnamed, one of our clients' mainframe managers the other day, and he was lamenting that his organization would not hire a new person until after the other one had retired. It's obviously a financial thing, but it really leaves them in a tough spot because the senior person's retired without being able to pass on all of that knowledge to the new person, and you've got someone brand new. There was a study by who the heck was it? Burson, the Burson Institute, Josh Burson's institute. It's 6 times more expensive to hire externally than it is to promote internally. So that's what we were talking about. I've seen this being used more and more by the big mainframe orgs incredibly successfully and very, very simply. It's not rocket science. Your systems people, your security people, your programmers in your distributed side, there's tens and hundreds of thousands of them coming out of college skilled and ready to go into those positions. The mainframe space is where it's hard to find skilled people. So with, this may seem self-serving, but this is why I'm experiencing it, because the Interskill e-learning plays a big part in this. If you've got e-learning that you can just roll out to whoever, mainframe organizations are starting to look at all of the distributed people, the non-mainframe systems people, the programmers and systems people, and security and data storage and et cetera, and seeing who's interested in maybe a mainframe career, chatting to them, talking to managers and saying, is there anybody that might fit in well, having open houses in the mainframe shop, saying, come and have a look what we do, et cetera, among their own personnel. And if anyone expresses an interest, they sign them up for access to courses so they can start picking up skills. If they're in systems and they can learn, about mainframe operations, or if they're in security, they'll start picking up RACF and so on and so forth. If they are skilled as a systems person in distributed, back to what we were saying before, the lines are really blurred. They're going to have a lot of those same skills, a lot of those techniques and the way that they do things and the way they think about things will make them very good in the mainframe space. They've just got to understand the operating system and so forth. Or they've got to pick up an extra programming language. Or they're already using Python and Java and C in the distributed systems so they can come over and start doing work in the mainframe space, but they need to understand the mainframe environment. So sometimes it's not a steep learning curve to give these people in the distributed group, in the non-mainframe IT group, some mainframe skills, so that when somebody's about to retire, you can bring them over, let them work half-time, part-time, do projects with the mainframe group. It's not an extra payroll expense. And then they just transfer straight over. They're already onboarded, saves money. They're already part of the company culture. They already work there. They know both systems, so that makes them even more versatile and more useful. In so many ways, it's a really successful method. And I forgot even the question that got us there.
Yeah, we were talking about, just you answered it perfectly. I think that the notion is something that you touched on that is really important. I don't think a lot of people that are at least at potentially management levels understand that there are really strong top individual contributors that all of us technicians know them.
Yeah.
They're the people we go to when we have a question and we're just not sure what the answer might be.
Yep.
Those people are absolutely critical to the operation of the organization, technology at whole.
Yeah.
Right. So this idea that the things you can't teach in, say, a learning module or something like that are exactly what you described. That's that business culture, the who to go to when you need to know the answer to something or you need to start down a path. And I think that your point about internal sourcing of talent to mainframe roles is going to be probably one of those, what I would consider probably the bubbles to the top of key success.
Even if it's just part of it. Even if you say, okay, I've got 20 people I need to replace next year. If I've got 14 of them that I can bring across internally, then I only need to go out and find 6 instead of needing to find 20. Because there are some coming out of colleges and Franklin apprenticeships and Broadcom's Vitality and all of these. There are some coming out, but not many. There's 2,500 mainframe organizations in the world that they've, not enough coming from these apprenticeship programs and stuff to cover all of the needs. So they need to be training up internally to at least cover part of that. Again, it all sort of meshes in so beautifully that then your senior mainframers before they retire are spending time, calls or a day or a social event or come to share with us, the share conference or GSE UK or whatever, and we'll show you some stuff there. This sort of bringing people into a mainframe community makes them lifelong mainframers. And that's the other sticky thing for corporations is bringing someone across because they got mainframe skills and having them go, yeah, this is all good, but there's another job offer and disappearing again. You really want to get them entrenched as a mainframer and understanding the wonder the wonder of the mainframe. But just being part of that community and being part of the global family, and then people will stick around and really take on that passion for mainframe and be a long-term mainframer, which is what corporations want.
I think one thing that you mentioned that you don't see outside of the mainframe community that I think, like when you were talking about bring somebody along to a conference, right? That might not be in the mainframe space. You and I have probably experienced this more than most, where you see someone who turns up to a conference and they're not explicitly a mainframer. Maybe they're a student, maybe they're someone outside the purview of the mainframe space, and they see how welcoming and inviting the mainframe community is and wanting to teach people and get them involved and hear their ideas. The trope of the old stodgy mainframer doesn't always exist at these conferences, right? And you'll find people that are willing to say, look, this, I want to tap into that because I want to use it on Z. And suddenly someone who might be kind of new to their overall IT career transitions from being the person learning from somebody to the person teaching, like, and being the subject matter expert almost instantly because they came to a conference with skills that aren't fully explored yet on the Z platform, and they're teaching people how to get started. And that first set of steps is absolutely critical for people that might consider themselves seniors or above. How do I get started? Get me started on this journey. Let me get moving. Another thing that you talked about, we've been talking now for a bit of a length about building talent and the value that training adds to organizations. And when you and I probably both talk to a lot of incoming technologists about why mainframes are a good option for a career path, right? Why they're exciting, why you can make a name for yourselves. And that notion is all around this idea of career stability. And I've heard you mention a few times on different things that I've listened to you talk about is this idea of pillars or strategies around career resiliency. And you actually mentioned it here just a moment ago, that I think not only applies to just IT careers in general, but it applies to specifically to careers in mainframes. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about those 4 strategies or pillars of career resiliency and how we as technologists, leadership and technologists, can embody those and nurture those pillars or strategies that you have in other people? How do we foster that?
Great question, mate. Yeah, and again, corporations should be looking at this the same as individuals should be looking at it for their own career. So when I say the 4 pillars, there's a whole lot more to career resiliency, but I like looking at it as just, so that you're not overwhelming yourself. There's really just 4 things to keep in mind as far as I'm concerned. Lifelong learning is one of them. You have to keep learning. You have to keep updating your skills, picking up new skills, being interested and intellectually curious, and be learning. Again, not necessarily structured training, networking, getting to know other people, going to conferences, reading articles, just the normal stuff you do if you're interested in something is finding out more. Your professional network is key for your career. You don't want to be sitting there alone when changes happen, when companies change direction, when technologies change, when who knows, companies go bust. All sorts of things can possibly happen. But for resilience in your career, you got to maintain your personal network. So that you've got people to connect to if there is a change and you want to shift, or people that can advise you because they've been through, again, mentoring, they've been through this sort of stuff before, or they can connect you with somebody who understands this better, or again, build that personal network. Back in the day, it was you'd go to share conferences or GSC UK, you'd go to a user group conference or something like that, was the way to network. These days with LinkedIn, no one possibly has an excuse for not networking and building up their professional network of personnel. Number 3, actively manage your career. So don't just let it float along and go wherever the currents or the winds take you. Look for opportunities, which is the 4th one. Be looking forward, be looking for opportunities, look to the future. So the 3rd and 4th are pretty similar, but actively manage it. Say, okay, I need to pick up these new skills. I'm in this industry. I need to know this. I need to know that. I need to talk to these people. I need to write an article on this so that people see that I'm some sort of a thought leader or I understand what's going on, and have that on LinkedIn and connect with the people that make a comment on there and say, hey, really well said. This resonated with me. Again, LinkedIn makes all of this incredibly doable these days. So, for the resilience of your career, don't just sit there like a mushroom. And I shouldn't say that because mushrooms grow really fast, but and are kept in the dark and fed lots of BS, as the joke goes. But be learning, always be learning, and be curious. Please build your professional network, old and young. Don't just be looking for old and senior people. Look for people from every gamut, because they can all teach you something. And actively manage that. You do your work every day, and you systematically and strategically look at your job and how you do your work. We'll start to look at your career the same way and start to develop a plan and say, okay, in 5 years' time, do I want to be sitting here doing the same thing, or do I want to be doing more? If you want to be sitting there doing the same thing, good luck to you. That's fantastic. It means you're very, very happy. But if you want something more, then okay, I'm going to be looking at what technologies might be coming up in 5 years. Let's do a little bit of training or read some articles or get to know somebody in that area, so that you suddenly become a leader. Becoming a leader in something that you're already in and is existing is a lot more difficult than picking something new where not many people know about it and really starting to become knowledgeable about that thing. And I am repeating myself. So.
No, that's kind of the nature of the beast, right? Because a lot of these lessons need to be mentioned again and again. And as someone who's been in the industry now for 15 years, believe that or not, I just recently had this kind of epiphany that I had a 5-year plan, right? As I just recently switched roles. I was just started at Insona about 3 years ago. And as a part of that, I got a unique opportunity to reflect on my career, on my goals, on my life, and all of that, and have the chance to think to myself, like, where do I want to be 5 years from now? What do I love about what I do? And what do I not like so much? And how can I emphasize the things that I love and the things that make me fired up and excited and ready to continue to grow? And how can I kind of minimize the things that I just put at the bottom of my to-do list?
No one wants
right?
to be in a job that they don't enjoy. I mean, start heading towards the stuff that really gets you out of bed in the morning and makes you want to do it. Can I add one more thing as well on the
Of course. This is your show, man.
On the professional network. I was talking to Stephen Dickens the other day, and on another podcast, funnily enough. But he was asking about, what would you tell your 21-year-old Darren?
That's his question.
As advice. Good question. And that was where I went with that. I was pretty, you'd get to a conference or be around senior mainframers that look like they're geniuses and know everything. And for a youngster, it's a little intimidating. Don't feel like you want to speak up because you might make a fool of yourself or have people think less of you and so forth. But please open up. Again, the mainframe industry is the closest thing to just a big family that I've ever seen. And I've had exposure into other industries and so forth. the mainframe space is just fantastic. And everyone wants to lift everybody else up because this is the future of the industry. And there's information to pass on, and most mainframers are really passionate about what they do. So be connected. I'll get you, as soon as I finish this train of thought, I'd like you to mention your Discord channel. But be connected at conferences or on LinkedIn is, again, just a natural. Chime in, connect with somebody and start chatting to them and messaging them. Ask them if they would like to be your mentor, or ask them a question about something they're passionate about, and you'll get some dialogue going. This is the way to build your network, and this is training, basically. It's a way to improve your skills and so forth, and be connected in the industry. But it's enjoyable. You'll learn things from these people that you connect with. They'll connect you with other people that may be the next big thing for your career. The next job, the next technology, the next project, the next award, the next something, by people connecting you to people and so forth. But yeah, please talk about Steven started a Discord channel for mainframers, and I don't know whether you thought it was going to be big or not. I get cool points from my 20-odd-year-old gamer son because I'm on Discord, so that's all cool. But it's just exploded. It's been fantastic. Please talk to that, mate.
Yeah, well, you've kind of just taken over my role as the host, I think. But yeah,
it's really cool.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I think that something that you had said will lead me into that, and I appreciate the plug there, is that this idea that the 21-year-old Darren Surch, right? There was no Discord. There wasn't LinkedIn. There wasn't these opportunities. Now, if you're not a social butterfly and you're not the type of person willing to walk up to somebody at a conference that you don't know and say, "Hi, I'm Steven Perva. I'm looking to get a career in mainframes. It's a pleasure to meet you." If you're not that person, now is the time for you to be existing, because you can hop onto Discord, you can type a message, you can hop onto LinkedIn, you can say something without having to literally say something, and understand that you're able to kind of control the narrative around who you are. You don't have to worry about the nerves or any of the anxiety around talking to people. You'll get there. That's a skill that you develop over time. But now is the time to be an introvert and still get your name out there. I talk to a lot of people that are new in their careers, and I say, write an article. And they're like, "Well, what would I write an article about?" I said, about what you're learning. Talk about that. Talk about the journey that you're on. Because even people like myself, that matters, right? Even people like myself, I can't do that now. I've been in this industry for 15 years. I can't write an article about what it's like learning to be a mainframer from day zero. So if I had to talk to myself, I would say, be more out there. You don't have to be standing in front of a podium in front of 50 to 75 people talking about your journey. You can write a blog and say, I'm learning this. It's quite challenging. Someone out there that is the you that needed this article will see that article and they'll say, I struggle with that too. And it's nice to know that someone else out there is having that same struggle, and that resonates with me. We've completely dashed my script here, which I love, and I definitely appreciate that. But something that I guess I will plug it. We do run a Discord community out there called the System Z Enthusiast Discord. This started as me and like two of my buddies just having a Discord space where we could just talk about ZOS topics. And it's now grown to over 2,100 members talking about mainframes. We don't require you to have your face on there. We don't require you, even though Darren does, we don't require you to have your full name on there. Some people choose to do that. Some people choose not to. You could just kind of be mainframe geek, right? And talk about whatever you want without feeling like you're being exposed or anything like that. And it's an amazing place to connect with other people, share your ideas, validate your ideas. Our whole section here that we've just completely destroyed was about community, right? And you and I are parts of a lot of different communities. Share, you had mentioned, the IBM Champion community. There's a Rising Champion community out there. The System Z Enthusiast Discord is just one facet of that. And being a part of that community gives us the opportunity to say something and have that gut check from somebody else. Because what might sound like a good idea to me, internal in my head, I'm not saying, "Hey, Steven, you got it wrong," right? But when I voice that out loud, people can kind of poke holes at it and make me a better technologist. They're not out to get me. Sometimes they are, right? But
But not even whether it's right or wrong. I mean, don't feel that. They could say, hey, have you thought about this aspect of it? Or have you thought about that aspect of it? And you'll go, oh, wow, this can be so much bigger, or maybe if I connect this in, or if this thing that took you 5 hours in this programming languages can take you 20 minutes in, using this or any of these sorts of things. I mean, we are so, it's synergy is the word, but we are so much better as a group, the total of our parts anyway. I'm rambling on, but yeah, the water cooler chats that you have every couple of months or something, is that the
yeah, we try to do once a month. Yeah,
once a month. Yeah, those things are fantastic. Everyone just gets on and starts talking about stuff, mainframe stuff, personal, well, not so much personal stuff, but typically mainframe stuff, industry stuff. And there's senior executives, there's from the highest to the lowest, from the old to the young, every variety of mainframer from around the world. And you can sit and listen. You don't even have to speak up. Just sit and listen, hear what everyone's saying. And I guarantee you, from an introvert myself, I can certainly chatter, but I get back from a share conference or another conference and I have to sit for a week with a book and not talk to anybody. It's exhausting stuff. But you'll find on LinkedIn and Discord and so forth, the passion takes you sometimes. People will be talking about something or chatting back and forward, and all of a sudden you really are interested in that, or you're passionate about it, and you'll find yourself, without even thinking about it, going pum, 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 and putting in a comment or clicking off mute and saying something, and there it is. You've said something and everyone's going to say, wow, that's fantastic, hadn't even thought of that, blah, 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 and you're off and racing. So don't put pressure on yourself and worry that you're going to be spotlighted or anything like that. Just be part of it. And 35 years later, I've got more of a voice in the industry, but we all start off as a newbie and slowly work our way up there. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and something that you said, I wanted to kind of I know the answer to the question. I want you to kind of reiterate the answer to the question, is that some people have this belief that notion of networking, that notion of community, that's really reserved for people who are trying to start their careers. The question was going to be, do you agree or disagree with that sentiment? And I think I know the answer, but I guess could you kind of elucidate that? That's the word you use. What your belief is around that.
I mean, just again, for personal career and also from the corporate level, it's so important that people are networking and swapping ideas and understanding things better. Look at, there's the Open Mainframe project is gatherings of people from all of the companies, mainframe orgs and so forth around the world, contributing to open source on the mainframe, and remarkable things are coming from it. As you said, I'm not the sort of person who could walk in, the old style networking dinners and gatherings where people would walk in and just walk up to everyone, hi, I'm Darren Surch, and blah, blah, blah. No way I could do that. Just walk up to somebody and say it just seems cheesy and horrible. But in the context of something that you're passionate about, in the context of mainframe computing or whatever the project is or so forth, it's easy to connect. So don't just network for networking's sake. Don't walk up to everybody walking up and down the street going, hey, I'm but if it's something that you're passionate about or you have something to offer, then definitely go there. I think, back to your question, sorry, that was off the track. For your career, it's a must to connect and learn from other people and teach other people and so on and so forth. Again, from a corporate side, maybe back in the day, mainframes used to be very monolithic and very insulated and everything was secret inside and no one wanted to talk to other companies and so on and so forth. But I think these days you can learn so much from other organizations, just not even technical stuff, just how things are done, attitudes, ideas, best practice, et cetera, et cetera. These things can really lift your organization if your people are actively out there looking for better ways to do things or smarter ways to do things. Yeah,
I agree 100% with you. I think that it's less about just consistently building yourself up, even because at the end tail end of your career, you're really not super concerned about that. It's about passing that baton, which we talked about way at the beginning of this. I do have a few more topics. I know we're at time. I want to steal some more of your time if you're welcome to give me that so that I don't look like a bad host.
No, Chad.
They're miscellaneous topics, so hopefully we can kind of rifle through these. And Darren came to me when we were talking about this initially, and he had said, we have to do something fun. I have a fun activity planned for us right before we wrap here, but I do have to talk about the topic of the now, right, which is AI. And if I don't say it, I'll never be asked to host anything ever again. What do you think AI's impact on training is going to be? Because you see a lot of, I'll teach you everything you need to know by just typing in a prompt, or I'll create the video that teaches you everything you need to know based on literature people have pumped into some sort of model or feedback on social networking or whatever. What's your take on AI and its impact on training today or in the near future?
Yeah, on training specifically. I mean, obviously IBM's been doing AI for decades. I have people come up to me and go, AI is such a new thing. ChatGPT is this and this. And I say, yeah, IBM's been doing that for 20 years. So AI has definitely evolved, although it's hit the turbo boosters now. It's moving at a hell of a rate. As far as training goes, and I'm talking about how it's going to impact training, not training on AI. It's a disruptor. It's going to change the industry, of course. But I can remember when the internet came out and this thing called Google, people said, why will we need training? All we have to do is type our stuff into Google and we can find out the answers to everything with this search engine, and I sort of said, yeah, try. And look at all the stuff you get, garbage in, garbage out. Look at all the stuff you get. Try and sort through all the rubbish and so forth. I think it's going to change the way training's done. It's going to, but that's no different than, what's happening every year. There's new technologies and new things coming up and it changes the way we do things. Classroom training was the only way to do training until someone decided you could do computer-based training and then that became e-learning and so on and so forth. Interskill uses it to help our subject matter experts with some of the courseware design, shaves 10-20% off the time so we can turn out more courses, which is really useful. We can use some aspects of it to tighten up audio tracks of some of our TED Talk style videos from industry experts. Some people have strong accents because they're from different countries and so on and so forth. So you can sort of tweak to make it more understandable without changing what they're actually saying, obviously. So there's various ways that we use AI already. Chatbots are obviously being used across education extensively. I haven't seen them used effectively on anything as technical as Mainframe. They're really good for soft skills and other sorts of training. But yeah, it's a disruptor and it's going to change things somewhat. I suppose, as far as I'm concerned, the key to really good training is always going to be not just the data. Otherwise, you could just read a book. The key to good training is going to be that instructional design and also that real world experience, stuff that's not sitting in a book somewhere. The experience of a senior mainframer being able to say, okay, this is the way you should do this because, it makes more sense, or this is the way we should handle this issue, or this is the goal that you should be aiming at, et cetera, et cetera. It's just that real world experience and so forth is always going to make training better for learning than just having the raw information. With that, I say, goodness knows, in a decade, AI may be running the world. We may be, we may have Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminators wandering around, God knows. But from what I can see ahead now, it will disrupt. It'll be very useful in the training space, and it'll make things better. I think it'll do better training and so forth. But I don't think it's fundamentally going to change.
I think it's fascinating to learn that, like everybody else, your folks and yourself are using it as an augmentation tool, right? And I definitely do this as well. And I lamented this story earlier this week. Was I was working with somebody who didn't know anything about ZOS and wanted to do some use case, right? And they came to me and they said, I went on to Copilot and I punched in, how do I do this? And this is what it gave back. Can you send this command to the system? And I said, I know that this command will not work, but I can send it to you to humor you. So the hallucinations are real. And I think that when you understand it as a augmentation tool, I think it really kind of helps, right? But you do have to kind of have some knowledge to start from to know what to ask, right? So maybe the evolution is training people how to use it, right? Maybe that's the evolution of training. I think
it depends where it gets the data from as well. It depends on the model, and any garbage that gets into that is potentially going to affect the output. And on something as technical as mainframe and potentially expensive as when something goes wrong and or other there can be inefficiencies built into code and other things that no one will ever see, and they're wondering why things aren't running very well, just because something's written wrong. So I suppose until you can lock down every piece of data that the AI is pulling from, you're always going to be uncertain. Whereas again, who knows? I've seen such changes in the last 35 years that who knows where it will end up. But for the foreseeable future, for the near future, it's going to be an enhancement. It's going to change the way we do things. It's going to offer up more things. It'll be cool. It'll be like my children, my 20 somethings are the internet and search engines and stuff are just a normal part of life for them. Social media, so people will just use AI prompts and it'll just be a regular. We'll probably won't even type anything in ever again. It'll just all be straight out of our brains. But
yeah,
who knows? But yeah, for the foreseeable future, it's a plus. The same as Watson, being able to convert COBOL code to Java.
Yeah,
that's a neat trick, but it's not. You can't just set it loose on billions of lines of COBOL code and expect it to work in Java. I mean, it's a tool.
Yeah, I agree.
Used to say,
I agree 100%. I think that it remains to be seen, and we will absolutely see over time where it kind of evolves for us, and I think we're all kind of feeling our way through it. But like you said, it's not a brand new topic. It's something that we've been adjusting with ourselves for some time now, since Watson smashed everybody at Jeopardy way back when. Right, and you mentioned things being an everyday part of life, and that kind of draws me to the fun activity that I wanted to do between you and I. And as you know, you and I have been friends for a minute now. I'm a bit of an Australian hip hop aficionado, right? And I've heard it said, someone said to me that Australia's prime export is children's TV shows. Well, I know that's not absolutely true. It's it's particularly relevant nowadays, especially anybody who has kids, with Bluey, the kids cartoon. And you hear all kinds of really fun phrasing and slang terms on there. And so what I did is I put together a list of what I think are, and you have to tell me if this is true or not, safe for work Australian slang terms and what I think they mean, having been exposed to years and years of Australian hip-hop. And I was hoping that you and I could kind of have a quick game, a lightning round game, where I'll hit you with an Australian slang term. You'll tell me what it really means, and I'll tell you what I think it means. And if we agree, we'll find out. You're the expert, I'm not, and we'll go from that. Does that sound good?
Can I throw in a disclaimer and a caveat with me being an expert? As Aussie as I am and as proud an Aussie as I am, I came to the States, to the US in '95. So when we originally met and you were saying you loved Australian hip hop, I didn't even know there was Australian hip hop because I came here in the mid '90s. So I'm still an '80s music guy. And my second caveat is that slang is very generational. So I know when I go home to visit these days back to Australia, some of the slang that the youngsters are rolling out there, I have no idea because I left the country 35 years ago. So I'll give it my best shot.
All right. Yeah, there you go. We'll give it a go.
What a wiggle that was. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we'll start with the classic example. Everybody knows this, and especially relevant to mainframers, is the term Barbie, right? We've seen mainframe Barbie, but everyone's heard the phrase "throw a shrimp on the Barbie," right? So the question is, what does the word Barbie mean in Australian slang?
This is a barbecue. Australians will shorten anything they can. You know, my nickname at school for Darren was Daz, so you'll put a Z on the end of it, or Steve-O, you would be Steve-O. You know, put an O on the end of it. So a Z or an O typically, or an A at the end of it, just to shorten things. Even the way we pronounce things, like Brisbane. Americans say Brisbane because that's how it's spelt, but it's just Brisbane. You shorten it if you can. Melbourne, just MELBN, probably pronunciation, so forth. So a barbie is just a barbecue, which for Australians, it's not like Southern barbecue in the US where it's ribs and stuff like that. A barbie is just like a Weber barbecue. You throw some sausages and chops and things on it, and have it by the beach or out in the bush or wherever you are.
So to add on to this, when I was looking through this, someone had said that the phrase "shrimp on the Barbie" isn't really a thing. That kind of is probably an Americanism, right? Is it actually true that Australians call shrimp prawns?
Prawns, that's right.
And they really don't largely barbecue them unless they're massive?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I grew up in the bush inland. I don't know whether the people on the coast do. Probably you can throw anything on a barbie, but
there you go. Awesome. So the next phrase, and this one you've used quite a bit here, is just the phrase mate, right? What would someone be considered if they're a mate? Is it just anybody? Is it?
Yeah, mate. It depends on the context you use it, I suppose. But your mates are it's more than a buddy. Your mates are your best friends, and you can talk them collectively as a group of friends can be your mates. But mateship is also a really close thing. Again, it's all on context.
Yeah.
On how it's used, it can mean multiple things. But yeah, friend is the best. And funnily enough, I still use it as a way of saying hello as well. You know, when I meet up with you, I'll go, mates. You know,
yeah, there you go. That's a classic.
Yeah.
Love it. So the next one, if you and I were to meet this Arvo, when would we be meeting up?
Yeah, afternoon. Again, we shorten everything we can.
That's another, and to follow along with that, when I sit down with my family this morning, we're going to have brekkie.
Yeah, breakfast short.
There you go. And absolutely prudent to who I am, after this recording, I'm going to head over to Macca's. Where am I going?
Yeah, McDonald's is one of the... America's had such an influence on Australia. And I know growing up, even as a kid in the early 70s, we used to sit down every Sunday and watch The Wonderful World of Disney on TV, you know. So we'd watch American shows, and American music is all over the world and so on and so forth. But America sent us Kentucky Fried Chicken and McDonald's and and Pizza Hut. They were the first three, I think, that made inroads into Australia. So yeah.
The next one might be a little odd for some people, but I've actually heard this and I want to explore a couple ideas. If I have a stubby holder, what is a stubby holder and what am I doing with it? And what do we call it here in the States?
Yeah, so stubby's a little bottle of beer. A stubby holder is what do they call it, a koozie or something here? Just an insulated holder so that your hands don't get too cold or your drink doesn't get too warm, one way or the other.
So I've heard it said that sometimes at funerals, you can tell me if this is true or false, that people will make, and we'll probably get in trouble for this, people will make like celebration of life stubby holders, right? And it's just, is this something you're familiar with?
I've never heard anything about that.
Okay, so I'll probably get in trouble for that one. But yeah, so it sounds really cool, really exciting. So and this one you might not know, it might be new, but you have to tell me. If you and I were hanging out, or I said, oh man, did you watch that video that Frank put on, the Skyward Data podcast? That was a ripper. What am I trying to say about that?
Aussies have got a lot of beauty, bloody beauty. A ripper, it's something that's really good. Yeah. There's a few like that. The ripper is really good. There was there's a saying, chock-a-block, which means something's really full. It's chock-a-block, and that gets shortened down to
chockers.
Chockers, that's right.
Yeah.
If something's chockers, then it's really, really full.
Yeah. The next one is another one that I didn't really know, and I've heard the phrase dacking, where someone will like put something in their pocket. Yeah. But when I'm putting on tracky dacks, what would I be wearing? It's something I wear all the time.
Dacks are pants, and so tracksuit pants, I suppose, is like gym pants or whatever they're called in America. So tracksuit pants is the full word, and again, Australians love to shorten things. So tracksuit pants becomes tracky dacks.
Yeah, we have two left. I think these are the fun ones. Well, the last one is one that I think is particularly hilarious. No offense to Australians. So the next one here is an esky. What are we doing with an esky?
An esky is a cooler. Yeah, that's an Eskimo was the brand, and it's like Americans say Kleenex instead of tissues. I'll call them Kleenex. So Australia calls a cooler an esky because of the brand.
And then finally, this one I find is hilarious. I used to listen to Triple J Radio, which I believe is a popular radio station there in Australia. I used to listen to it.
It's the edgy alternative radio station.
Yeah. I heard a lot of newscasts out there. Every once in a while, they do a news segment on Triple J, and they would always talk about bikies. Who are they talking about when they're talking about bikies? Yeah. My brain immediately goes to, and no offense to any bikies out there, a bunch of children on tricycles rolling around like, oh, my daughter's a bikie, like she's in a bikie gang, right? A bunch of children, and that's it. I think that we're in agreement here, and or maybe I could consider myself to be a certified Aussie transplant.
Honorary.
Huh? Honorary. An honorary Aussie transplant. We've been way over time here. I do want to share something that you shared with me as we close. You're not expecting this. Darren has always said to me this quote: "A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in." I think that quote really embodies who you are. And before we do close, I do want to let you have an opportunity to let anybody tuning into this podcast know what we can expect from Darren Surch and Interskill Learning in the future. Anything you want to plug or talk about, or anything like that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that saying is fantastic, and I think that's why we give back. You don't give back for immediate returns. It's nice for me to think that the next generation will be lifted up based on the stuff that we've done. Not just work. Obviously, there's a massive lift from delivering education because people's careers are better and their families live better and their corporations run better and so forth. So training lifts like few other things can. But I think the community work that you and I do, with the IBM Champion program, with all of the other stuff we're involved in, just really helps to lift up this industry and lift people's lives, which I take enormous satisfaction in. It's what gets me up each day. As far as what's coming up next, more of the same. Again, as I said, AI is going to change education, but my main push, my main passion, and my main want, I suppose, in this industry is just to get organizations to step up when training. Don't keep complaining that you're worried about mainframe skills and so on and so forth. The solution is there, whether it's anything to do with Interskill or not. For goodness sake, give your people the tools. A culture of learning. Google that. Read up on a culture of learning. Every organization should have a culture of learning. It should be perceived by every single person, in our world, in the mainframe space, that should be part of their daily lives. They should be constantly looking to train up or read up or understand something better or connect with somebody or so forth. That culture of learning that makes it cool and makes it perceived as just a normal part of life in today's fast-changing world is what companies need to do, and step up and fuel fuel your personnel. Let them be all that they can be. To steal that from the army, I think it is, of the Marines. Yeah. So yeah, I look forward to many more years. I'm an ancient creature now, but looking forward to many more years in the mainframe space. The mainframe's not going anywhere, and still going to be the core system of all of the organizations that run the world. And looking forward to being a part of that for many more years to come. Knock on wood.
Yeah, you and me both, man. You and me both. And I'm getting the virtual crook here. They're telling me that it's time for me to stop talking.
3.5 hours later.
I've made the major faux pas of just talking and talking and talking. So on behalf of myself and on behalf of the Skyward Data podcast, thank you, Darren, for joining me. And thanks for making this a bit easier on me to do my first swag at being a podcast host. And for those of you tuning in, we hope that you'll join for the next one, and thanks for listening. Have a great one.
Well done, mate. Cheers. Thank you.